Subjectivism, relativism, and objectivism. First, let's discuss the ethical subjectivism.
Ethical subjectivism is also called moral subjectivism. It is a theory that asserts that the basis of the goodness or badness of an act is the human agent himself, the one who decides to act, the subject of an action. It asserts that moral judgments are really feeling, not facts, that there are no right and wrong answers, and each person is entitled to his or her own views. It also comes from the belief that every individual has his or her own set of experiences that form his or her moral values. In ethical subjectivism, morality is a matter of personal decision. Every person has the autonomy to choose which moral principle he or she should adopt and which he or she should reject. Cannot subjectivism be applied in the real world? Why is that so? It is because societal codes and rules of conduct are formed and agreed upon by people because these are assumed to ensure harmony, order, and peaceful coexistence. Ethical subjectivism invites anarchy, chaos, fighting, mistrust, violence and a war of all against all. Therefore, ethical subjectivism is prone to danger, a sure formula for a chaotic society, and may also breed political tyranny. Cultural relativism and ethical relativism. Moral or ethical relativism is a logical result of the claims of cultural relativism. Norman Bowie, a business ethicist, claimed that ethical practices differ among cultures, that, as a matter of fact, what is considered right in one culture may be considered wrong in another culture. For example, in Eskimos' culture, they practice infanticide. The men lend their wives to their visitors as a sign of hospitality. They also abandon their old and feeble people in the snow to die. King Darius of ancient Persia once said, "Culture is the lord over them all." Moral or ethical relativism, on the other hand, claims that what is really right or wrong is what the culture says is right or wrong. If a culture sincerely and reflectively adopts a basic moral principle, then it is morally obligatory for members of that culture to act in accordance with that principle. The basis of the goodness or badness of an act is the culture of the society. James Rachels, an ethics scholar, stated fundamental claims of cultural and ethical relativism. First, various societies have various ethical beliefs and codes. Second, there are no moral principles that are common in all societies. Third, moral standards are not moral absolutes. They are dependent on the evolving and dynamic nature of society's cultures, beliefs, and practices. Fourth, there are no objective moral values. Society determines what is good and what is bad within its particular society. Fifth, there is no privileged and special culture that other cultures would look up to, emulate and immolate. Every culture is unique unto itself. Lastly, no society can brag about its morality. There is no morally inferior culture, there is simply a difference. So what can we learn from cultural relativism? We may not tolerate practices that are morally wrong, but we must also respect the differences of cultures, beliefs and mores. We must not, at once, reject cultures that are different from us, and we must appreciate the uniqueness and varieties of culture. We must not dwell on the external differences, rather, we must work to find unity among diversity of cultures. Our last topic is all about moral objectivism. Moral objectivism maintains that there are moral principles that have universal validity regardless of time, place, and culture. The rightness or wrongness of an act ultimately lies on universal ethical principles that humanity has discovered, developed, and cultivated for it to survive, to have meaningful existence, and to form a more humane community of people. James Rachels also stated the common values among societies. These are the care for the offspring, truth-telling and prohibition against murder. Other sources also stated that protection of personal property is also common to societies. Moral absolutism does not accept exceptions to ethical rules under any circumstance or situation. Moral imperialism means the attitude of imposing one's values to another society. Relativism and objectivism in relation to globalization and international business ethics. Joseph E. Stiglitz, a former chief economist of World Bank, defined globalization as closer integration of the countries and people of the world, which has been brought about by the enormous reduction of costs of transportation and communication, and the breaking down of artificial barriers to the flow of goods, services, capital, knowledge, and to a lesser extent people across borders. Globalization leads to the emergence of multinational corporations. These are firms that operate in many countries. International business ethics refers to the comparison of business practices and their ethical evaluation in different countries. Thomas Donaldson, a business ethicist specialist on international business ethics, stated that when it comes to issues raised in global business ethics, the answer cannot be found either in pure ethical relativism or rigid following of codes formulated by business ethicists and other governing bodies. Societies need to avoid the extremes of ethical relativism on the one hand and moral absolutism and moral imperialism on the other.